The Louisiana Ragin Cajuns looking to put a bow on the Sunbelt regular season. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz back with another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, as you can see, we got another special guest. We have Kevin Foote, the Ragin Cajuns beat writer for the Acadiana Advocate. He joins us live from Lafayette, Louisiana. Kev, did the Ragin Cajuns exceed their expectations this year? Because I think when we saw the over-under was like 8.5 wins, even Cajuns fans were like, what are you talking about? And then I started looking back, and really the only question was going to be quarterback, and that question was answered by the two guys that they've had.
Absolutely. You know, it was funny. I remember talking to people at Sunbelt Conference Media Day, and at the time, my question was, the last 2 years, they had to get to their third quarterback. And so if they got to their third quarterback this year, they were talking about, you're looking at like the backup quarterback is going to be Daniel Bill, a true freshman who they like, but he's a true freshman. He's never played. So that was my biggest question. I thought they kind of had all the, they had good people at every position as long as you stayed reasonably healthy. I don't think any of us really, like the year after the Cajuns won the title in 2021, they were picked to win the West. But, that was because they won the title the year before. I don't think anybody really thought Troy was going to be – I didn't think Troy was going to be better than the Cajuns because they struggled to beat the Cajuns last year. But I kind of thought Texas State would be, but I thought the Cajuns were the second best choice. So I guess you could say that exceeds expectations, but not by much for me.
I will say the one person who told us on and off the record, if you will, the one person who saw this coming was the head coach, Mike Desimo. He said it publicly and he told us privately, it's time to win. I know my job is on the line, but we have the talent to do this. They lost a couple of key players in the transfer portal, but not mass exodus. They really didn't have a lot of new guys coming in. And this team has been together, and you hear it all the time how much the seniors mean to these programs, and it's a lot of yada, yada, yada. But maybe it does mean a little bit more this time around because some of these guys stuck through two administrations, if you will, and they're seeing their fruits of the labor pay off.
What's interesting is if you go back and look at 2021, the reason why did they win in 2021? Because they didn't turn over the football, right, and they had a veteran quarterback who didn't make mistakes. Zion Chris leaves. If Zion Chris does not leave, the Cajuns are not playing to win, are not going to be in the conference championship game. They had a senior quarterback in Ben Wooldridge who basically played like Levi Lewis. Now, he's not the same athlete, the height, everything like Levi Lewis, but he's like Levi Lewis in that he's a film study nerd. He keeps him out of trouble. He doesn't turn over the football, and when he needs to run, he can run, and he can throw when he needs to throw. And so he made so few mistakes until he got hurt that, that's why. Look, they until the South Alabama game, they didn't have a single fumble. They're the only team in the country that hadn't lost a fumble until that game. And they hardly ever turn over the football. The only two times that they had more than one turnover in a game were the two games they lost. And so it all goes back to not turning over the football. Where if you look at last year, Zylan Perry had a fumble problem. That was one of the big questions coming into this season. He's really talented, but can he ever stop fumbling? And so they just turned it over too much the last few years, and they're not turning it over this year, and that's made a huge difference.
Talking to Kevin Foote on Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. He is the beat writer for the Acadiana Advocate, covering the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns. All right, so the Cajuns actually have one of those semifinalists for a National Player of the Year in Kenny Almendarez, the Lou Groza Award winner for best place kicker in the country. I feel that's a good and bad situation. Obviously, he's had a tremendous season for the Cajuns. I think he's missed only 2 field goals, and both of those were over 50 yards. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he leads the nation in field goals. That's really
Yes.
good for him, but that's been one of the MOs. That's been a problem for the Cajuns, where they kicked too many field goals against South Alabama. They kicked a lot of field goals against Southern Miss, and they haven't been able to put games away like Texas State. They were kicking field goals instead of touchdowns. They had to kick a field goal late against Wake Forest, and they got lucky that Wake missed. So Kenny Almendarez has been great. He probably should win the award, but they haven't been able to finish when given those scoring opportunities as much as I'm sure Mike Desimo would like.
Yeah, they would. Some of those, not all of the ones, like against South Alabama, they were really trying. They just, they just didn't execute in the red zone,
Right.
or the goal zone as they call it. But a few of those, like in the Southern Miss game, he was being extra conservative because he had some injuries, including to Ben at that point, and he was just trying to get him through that game. And they felt like the defense kind of had, Southern Miss's offense under wraps, so he wasn't going to take a lot of chances. So that game, I think he was extra conservative because he felt like he could be. But yeah, no, you don't want to kick too many. Now they also don't punt a lot. So they're in scoring range a whole lot more than most teams are. So they're gonna have more scoring opportunities, period, field goals or otherwise.
Talking about, you said some injuries. Where is this team? Because they feel like they are a little bit banged up. They have not run the ball well the last couple of weeks. Zylan Perry wasn't playing last game. I feel like Draylon Washington got banged up. Bill Davis is your lead back. Right now, your only back. We know that obviously Ben Wooldridge is out. Is the offensive line intact? Keon Martin is back after what looked to be an awful hit in the Texas State game, but he got on the plane, and I know he missed a game after that, but he has 2 interceptions, could have had 3. What's that defensive secondary look like? Because this is a banged-up Ragin' Cajuns football team.
It is. Keon should play. He got a chance to speak to him after for the little post-game practice presser today. So I think he's fine. He missed that game, and he admitted it. It was a little mental. It was more mental than physical. Once he got cleared physically, I'm saying.
Okay.
So he got over
really?
that last week, and he obviously played great. He had 2 interceptions,
Sure.
And really that was a big key to them because really that game was a little closer than the final score indicated. It was
a one-score game midway through the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Troy played really. I was very impressed with Troy's quarterback in that game. Everybody told me that. I had heard that he's the third quarterback, but I thought he played really well in that game. But anyway, that was a big difference in it. Now, Lorenzo Dubose did not play last week. He's expected to play. On the offensive side, Draylon Washington is not playing. They hope that Zylan Perry will play. They feel like he might play. But Draylon Washington is not playing. And so, again, they ended the last week's game with Bill Davis, who was banged up and kind of gutted through it, and Tylen Citizen, a walk-on from Church Point. So that's what they had at running back at the end of last week. They're hoping Zylan can be there. The good thing about the last 2 weeks were they were playing teams that I talked about Ben earlier. They were teams that injuries at running back and the defenses they were playing, they weren't going to run the ball because South Alabama didn't give up that many rushing yards. They're one of the best rush defenses in the conference. And so they needed to win those 2 games with the passing game. And last week, Chandler did that. And the week before, it should have done. I thought the receivers, they didn't have any flat-out drops, but there were 3 or 4 balls, including 2 for touchdowns, that would have been above average catches that if they make them, they win the game. And so last week they made all those catches, and that was the difference.
Right. All right. We'll come back. We'll continue our conversation with Kevin Foote from the Acadiana Advocate in Lafayette, Louisiana. We'll talk about Chandler Fields filling in for the injured Ben Wooldridge right after I tell you about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back with Kevin Foote, the beat writer for the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns for the Acadiana Advocate. On a side note, Foote, do the Saints have any chance at winning the NFC South?
Well, if they beat the Rams, people have been trying to throw that out there. I'm like, let's see if they can get off the field against those two receivers first. If they beat the Rams, then I'm willing to talk about it. Look, I'm still convinced Saints have the best team in the division, but they were so beat up for a while and playing backup JV quarterbacks, as I call them. I mean, it's been a disaster year. But no, if they beat the Rams, I think it's still realistic.
All right, so we were talking about beat up quarterbacks. Again, the Cajuns can't make it through a season. Mike Desimo been here 3 seasons, and unlike his predecessor, Billy Napier did not lose a start to a backup quarterback. In fact, in all of Billy Napier's 4 years, his Nunez started all those games. Yeah. Levi would spell him every 4th possession, and then Levi did not miss a start in 3 consecutive years. Here, we both knew going in that if something happened to Ben Wooldridge, you have Chandler Fields, and he has been maybe even more than anyone could expect. He's not your normal backup quarterback. He's been in that program for a long time. He's graduated. He's engaged. He's getting married. His fiance already has a good sales job. He's probably going to finish up an MBA. But what did it mean when Chandler came in? I think it was 24-3 or 23-3 with against South Alabama, and he led them all the way back to within a 2-point conversion.
It was 24-3, and and look, everything I said, I totally believe about what I said earlier about Ben Wooldridge. But there are certain games where the passing game needs to carry the day, and against South Alabama, the passing game needed to carry the day because they weren't going to run it with the injuries last week. They weren't going to run it. Chandler is not a better game manager than Ben Wooldridge is, but what he does have is a stronger right arm. He's a more natural passer, and they needed to win with the passing game, and he almost brought him back against South Al and really came through without much of a run. It only ran for 95 yards, and he had a 37-yard run, the longest run of his career. So they had no running game last week, and they needed a pure passer, and so that part kind of worked out well with the matchups that they had.
And have they tried anything different? Does Desimo run specific plays for Chandler? And how quickly can he change that, within one game compared to being prepared for Troy? Because obviously, they took numerous shots down the field, including, I think, the first play of the game.
The first play of the game, yeah. The way Coach Des described it to me is this. They ran all the plays in the spring, and then they have plays that Chandler does. I mean, that Ben didn't really like to throw as much as Chandler, so they put those on the shelf. And now when Ben is there, Ben's not there anymore, and Chandler is, they take those plays out off the shelf, and they've worked on them all. And it's just a matter of there's some plays that both run, and there's certain plays that Ben likes that Chandler doesn't, and vice versa. So now they're using those plays again.
All right, so I'm looking at this right now. A little bit surprised to see this. It says that ULM is the number 1 pass defense in the conference, 183 yards a game. Is that right? I thought, maybe they can't stop the run. Maybe that's it. They have an issue not stopping the run. They're 10th.
I don't think their numbers are bad either way. I don't think their defensive numbers are pretty good all around from what I saw earlier.
Well, the defense was really good. 5 out of the 6 first games, except against Texas, but it has not been very good as of recently. And so do you still think the Cajuns are in pass mode now? And they got to get, through 2 more games. If they beat ULM, they will be in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game. They're not going to have a chance to rest until after that game.
Correct. Well, I think they're going to try to run the ball a little bit more and control the clock. But again, Coach Des has said he wants to run the ball. That's what he believes. But he said, I'm not going to sit here and bang my head against the wall and try to create a running game when we have all these, a quarterback that can throw and these outstanding receivers. Like, they're going to try. And if they run, they're going to keep running. But if it doesn't work, they're going to go to the passing game. And you could argue the passing game is more dynamic, especially Chandler. Again, Ben is not the kind of quarterback that wants to throw it every down. You leave it up to Chandler, he would throw it almost every down. So I think they're more equipped to do that, but I think they're going to try to run the ball. And I would think that they would be able to run the ball, especially if Zylan can play. Now, if Zylan can't play, I mean, you're going to want to spell Bill as much as possible.
Yeah, so just to make sure we're right on this, ULM is number 1 in the pass defense, giving up 183 yards a game pass defense, but rush defense, they are 10th in the conference. They give up more yards on the ground at 198 yards on the ground. So I would presume the Cajuns are going to start there and work their way back to the pass. Usually, like this year, like you said, and other people, Cody Junot came on there and said, Juno said, we're not gonna run against a stacked box.
Right.
So we'll pass it. Napier did that a lot too. I got frustrated with that because he thought that teams were coming out to stop him. And back in the day, nobody could stop him, but they still tried to pass it to begin with.
He's in an interview. No, I think it's gonna. I think they're gonna be able to run it now. The Cajuns have faced quite a few teams this year that are giving up over 200 yards rushing. So I guess I'm kind of thinking that as long as you're not giving up 200, it's not terrible. But no, we'll see. Again, a lot of that's going to depend on the health. Also, right tackle George Jackson probably still not going to play. He didn't play last week. It didn't. They said they're going to try one more time, but it didn't sound good that he was going to play, and so he's still not 100% healthy on the offensive line. So I think they're going to try to run, and if it doesn't, then they're going to throw. And the most important thing is that they don't give up a lot of quick scores. They're really worried about the running back. In fact, Coach Des kind of thinks he's the best running back in the whole conference. I mean, I haven't.
Oh yeah.
He is really high on the running back.
Really good. He's going to be Kevin Ahmad Hardy's going to be the offensive player of the year in the Sun Belt.
He is really high on him, and I haven't seen him play. I'm anxious to see him on Saturday, but he's really high on him. And so, as long as they don't get beat deep because they're sucking them in on the run, then I think they'll be okay and they'll be able to run the ball. If not, they're going to be in a little more hurry up.
All right, let's take a quick timeout. We'll continue to preview this ULM game against the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns with Cajuns beat writer Kevin Foote from the Acadiana Advocate after we thank you for being a subscriber. All right, do want to thank everybody who has subscribed as of recently and everybody who's been with us for a couple of years. We're up over 1,650 subscribers. We had our biggest podcast, one of them up to date, due to the strange situation of Charles Huff maybe taking the Southern Miss job or being up for it. So I appreciate that. Over 1,000 downloads on that one, actually closer to 1,200. So I appreciate everybody who's been a part of Locked On Sunbelt. Kevin has been generous enough with his time over the last couple of years. I do appreciate it. We had a great episode with Lou Creasy from the Herald Dispatch as well. So everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. This episode is coming out on Thanksgiving. We'll have another one to preview the weekend's action on for Friday as well. Don't forget, you got South Alabama and Texas State playing on Friday, so they don't compete with the Iron Bowl. We'll be back to wrap things up with Kevin Foote of the Acadiana Advocate right after this. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Back with Kevin Foote from the Acadiana Advocate, live from Lafayette, Louisiana. All right, we're continuing our discussion with ULM. Got off to such a great start, winning 5 of their last 6. They've played a couple of close ball games, actually had a shot to beat Arkansas State last week. They got Arkansas State off the field on 3rd and 8, or at least an incompletion, but then they had a roughing the passer penalty. I'm not sure how rough it was, but he did push the quarterback down. He probably shouldn't have done that at all. And on the next play, Jalen Rayner throws a 44-yard touchdown pass to put Arkansas State ahead, and they went on to win at 28-21. I do like the way Brian Vincent has got this team going in the right direction. It's just been a little bit of a slog. They do struggle offensively. They are not. You're talking about worried about quick scores. I'd be worried about scoring at all. They do have Ahmad Hardy, that is for sure. He is a lethal weapon in the backfield for ULM, but they've had an issue, generating consistent offense throughout the season.
Yeah, when they were 5-1, quite a people around here were saying, "Yeah, I just hope they can get that 6th win before the Cajuns get down there, because I'd like for them to have that out of the way."
Right.
But it didn't happen. But what they're talking about is, like, if what they like to do is sucker you in and then try to throw deep. They obviously haven't been all that successful with that, but that's the thing that you got to make sure that you don't allow to happen in this matchup. I think if 2 years ago when the Cajuns went over there and lost, they gave up a 90-something yard touchdown pass, and they botched a punt that gave them like a 8 or 10 yard drive. So if they don't do those things, then they should win. But again, in 2021, the Cajuns were really good when they won the conference. The last game of the year, they beat ULM 21-16. I mean, they easily could have lost the game. The years before, Billy's other years there, where they lost, they won 31-30 and 33-30. I mean, because of missed field goals. They were fortunate. So, I don't really think this is going to be an easy game unless they can get to +2, +3. Then it might be easy.
In turnovers, you mean?
Turnovers, yeah.
That's what. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
The thing is now Aiden Armenta is your quarterback. The first 2 weeks, I believe, was General Booty. They scored like 66 points, Kevin, but they did not have 200 yards of passing offense combined in the 2 ball games. They put up some points, but again, it's been an issue generating offense outside of, and you brought him up before, Ahmad Hardy. He has been a pleasure to watch. He himself had over 200 yards last week in the loss to Arkansas State. So he very much, carries the offense on a regular basis.
The Cajuns gave up 272 yards rushing to Tulane. Since then, they've had issues with run, but it hasn't dominated any game. And so we'll see what happens in this matchup.
So I want to talk to you about that. I'm going to go back to that because it's tough to blame one person for this, but wasn't that the week where Cortland Flowers was kicked off of the team, and then all of a sudden you had, 2 players out of position, so to speak. You had one player filling in for Cortland Flowers, and then you had another player filling in for the guy filling in for Cortland Flowers. And that took a little bit of time for their defense to work it out. They went to Wake. They gave up a bunch of points to Wake, and this is a really good Ragin' Cajuns defense once it got settled in with the positions.
It is, yeah. And they Jalen Clark just hasn't had a great year. And I'm really surprised. I really thought he was going to have a good year, and he just didn't. And then the Cortland Flowers thing happened, and, none of that stuff was good. It was like, both teams played. That Tulane game was just unmercifully hot. I mean, they don't, they don't need to be playing morning
games, right?
11 or noon games in September in South Louisiana.
No.
They don't do that. But really, the big culprit in that game was a pick six. I mean, it was a route where Ben threw it, and Terrence Carter, the way Coach Des described it was he saw what Ben saw, and he saw what Terrence saw, and he was like, it was gray air for both of y'all. Let's forget about it and move on. It wasn't like a black and white issue where one messed it up and not the other one. And it was just a route where, Terrence kept going, and Ben thought he was stopping, and they got a pick six. That was really, they lost the game by 8 points with a pick six and a 100-something yard kickoff return. So,
right.
They could have won the game. They just didn't. It's football.
They could have won the game, but they just didn't. All right, let's wrap things up here with Kevin Foote, the Acadiana Advocate. You mentioned you do think that the Cajuns are going to win this game against ULM. This would be, again, not a surprise, not a shock, because this has been a house of horrors for a lot of teams going up there. It is an early ball game. It is 11 a.m. You've made this trip many times. We know you have a lead foot. It's a bunch of speed traps. Don't get any speeding tickets making the trip up to Monroe there, Foot. So
be covering Turling and John Curtis Friday night, and then getting up real early and driving to Monroe.
So you're already basically saying you're getting a ticket. That you've already told us you're getting a speeding ticket. You've just told us you got to get up too early to make the drive. You're hoping to get there by kickoff.
Yeah.
It's on national TV. It's on ESPNU. So we've talked about it. You do think it's going to be they're going to try and run the ball, or do you think they are going to try and
I think they're going to try to establish the run first. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think this is going to be exactly like the last 2 games. Now, If Zylan doesn't play or he doesn't play well and they can't run the ball, then it will be like the last 2 weeks. But I don't think that's their intention.
All right. So I do have to ask you this. I really don't want to, but it is a thing. It is not looking good for the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns basketball team. I believe they are 1-6. And that one is not against a Division I squad, I don't believe. Where does this basketball team go, right? They lost Katinge. He was going to be their best player. Hardy is expected back before conference play. And you got McNeese coming in here, coming into Lafayette in about a month with their former player, Mr. Everything, Joe Charles. Will Wade has never coached a game in the Cajun Dome. I'm sure it could be their biggest crowd of the year, of the season, and yet it could be an ugly basketball game because McNeese is pretty good.
McNeese is good. I was worried last year about that point for the Cajuns and for Coach Marlin, but they went to Lake Charles, actually played very well and probably should have won.
They should have won that basketball game.
Yeah. And so, look, right now I don't like anything about what's taking place so far. They are playing horrible defense. So I think they can figure some things out offensively and player rotation wise. I think that's possible. It's not like he has nothing to work with. There are talented players. There are probably 11 players that could help a good team. It's just that every team's got to have their one or two stars. They got to have their one or two go-to players. They got to have their one or two guys that go run the offense through. They just haven't established any of those, and I don't know if they're there. It's almost like they have 11 good complementary players, but no lead actors, and so somebody's got to step up, and we'll see if they can do that. So I think it's possible they could get the scoring part of it done. I just don't know if they'll ever be able to get the rebounding and the defense side fixed. But and what's even worse is the way the schedule works. It seems like you have these long gaps where you're not playing. You go a week without playing, then you play Houston. Like, they're not even remotely ready to play Houston. That game does nothing for them. And then before that, they played UT Dallas. They didn't play that well. I mean, they won by like 16 or something. But, I mean, that game doesn't help them. And so the schedule has been counterproductive, and the injury to Harding is counterproductive, and just it's just not off to a good start at all. They don't have much time to figure it out because, the conference starts at the end of December. So, we're basically a month away, and they got a lot to figure it out. You're right.
Yeah, but now everybody gets into that crazy Sun Belt Conference tournament.
Yeah, I don't. Like I've said here, people are asking, and, there are people that have been wanting Coach Marlin going for a long time. Right. But I said, I want to at least give them to the end of January, beginning of February, just to see if they can figure it out. And if they can, and I don't know how they're going to be honest with you. Right. But if they do figure it out, then they're going to deserve a lot of credit because it looks, it's pretty, again, it's not that they don't have talent. I just don't know how they're ever going to rebound consistently enough or play defense consistently enough.
He is Kevin Foote. He's the Ragin Cajuns beat writer for the Acadiana Advocate. Kind enough to join me pre-Thanksgiving to record this Locked On Sunbelt podcast. Kevin, thanks so much for your time. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Drive safely and slowly up to Monroe and back. They're sitting there waiting for you. I feel like you have run into that situation prior to this.
Yes. I hope you use cruise control effectively.
Slow down when you're coming into those small towns. They're waiting for everybody. They're just waiting for all of the Cajun fans to make their way up to Monroe. I appreciate your time, Kevin. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thank you.